Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Neighbor built a legal house on my property, claims he owns my land." There is a piece of land that has been in my family for generations. I think it used to be a farm, but after a while it got used for other things. At this point it is mostly empty land and big old trees. My grandfather owned it, and when he passed away the land was given to me. Technically to my parents, but they didn't want to move from where they are living now. Instead, I got to be the lucky one and got the land where I moved in with my wife. I have the best memories of this place and hanging out with my grandfather. When we moved in, we decided to take a look around the whole plot of land since I have no been there in quite a while. In an area of the land that was a little more tree dense than the others, I saw a treehouse built in a big oak. This surprised me because I was the only grandchild he had, and I outgrew the age for a treehouse many years ago. This wasn't from my childhood either because it looked new and, in my opinion, way too fancy. This treehouse had actual glass windows and what looked like carpeting. I have no idea who built this, but I knew for sure that it was not my grandfather. I waited around until a woman showed up with her 2 kids and they ran up to the treehouse. She glared at me before speaking. "Woman, what are you doing here? Coming to watch my kids play like some kind of creeper? Get the hell off of my property before I have you sent to jail." Me. Actually, I own the property and wanted to know why there was a random treehouse built without my permission. "Woman, nobody owns this property. It is free, so me and my husband built my kids a wonderful treehouse." Me. "I have proof it is my property, and you need to remove it." She just glared at me again and finally told her kids that they had to leave because the creepy man wants to stop you from having fun. Now for this treehouse, there are a couple things that I want to say regarding why I don't want it there. It is a huge property, and we really don't need the entire thing, but if those kids get hurt playing on our property and we let it happen, we could be responsible. And trust me, the mother would change her story about us letting her kids play and sue me in a heartbeat. The other thing is because after being in our new home only a week, we heard some pretty famous things about those neighbors. Where we live is broken up into 2 parts. The area that is all old farms and families that are more on the living wage side of things. Then the other half is new homes full of rich snobs. They decided that the poorer kids were not allowed to play in the treehouse, even though she clearly said before that it was free and open property. Her story changed like this every time someone tried to figure out what was going on. Because of both of these reasons, I decided to have the treehouse removed from my property. I got the permit and even made sure that the stuff inside of the treehouse got sent back to the rightful owner. The only thing that really got dumped was the lumber used to build the thing. As you can probably guess, the mother was beyond angry and actually said that she was going to call the cops on me for destruction of property. I had no reason to worry because I had the permit and proof that it was on my property from when I had it removed. She did call them, and they told her the same thing and that I had every right to remove it. I thought for a long time how I could do something to get revenge on this woman. I really only like revenge when it is something good that just so happens to screw over the assholes. After a while I think I finally figured out the best way to do this. Do you remember before when I said the land was far too big for us to use all of? Well, we ended up working with the town to donate a piece of our land to have it turned into a community playground for all of the kids to enjoy. We wanted to do it through the town, so we didn't need to worry about getting sued or anything. The kids loved the playground and most of the parents in my part of the community thanked us so much. We were given so much food and so many baked goods from parents that were happy their kids could have a place to play without worrying about being safe. Also not worrying about the rich snobby kids causing them trouble and excluding them. There was one thing that I felt the playground needed in order to be perfect for the kids. I even donated the time to build it myself since I am licensed as a contractor. In the playground was one of the big oak trees, and you can probably guess what I did with it. If you guessed, I built a treehouse, then you would be right. Of course, mine was very different from the one that neighbor ended up building for her kids. This one was like a real treehouse and not trying to turn the outdoors into the indoors. It was simple, sure, but all of the kids liked it and would climb up and try to see how far they could see from the windows. The town even held a fun day where all the kids could come and help paint the treehouse together. It ended up looking like a disaster, but what you would expect kids to do. As for neighbor, she was furious all of this was going on and went to the town many times to try and get rid of the public park. She claims that when she tried to do the same thing, I was allowed to have hers destroyed. It was explained to her again that the issue was she built a private treehouse on someone else's property while the park was now on town property officially. I have no idea if she understood and pretended not to, or if she was actually that stupid. I also don't know to this day if she understood, but she never tried to build on my land again. As for her kids, I have not once seen them at the playground with all the other kids. Even some of the kids from their social circle would show up. To a kid, a playground is just a playground. Kids are kids, and it doesn't matter if you are from one of the farms or one of the fancy new homes. I think that I got pretty good revenge though, because in the end the happier everyone else was, the angrier she got. Some people say that the best kind of revenge is doing to the person exactly what they did to you. Or even doing something worse. The way my grandfather taught me though was to be such a good neighbor that it gets them mad. He might be gone, but his advice is still golden to this day. The next story is titled, Young Firefighter Disrespects a Lieutenant, So I Shame Him and Get Him to Quit. I'm not sure if this is pro or not, but I got revenge on a douchebag I used to volunteer firefight with. This was in the early, mid-2000s. I decided to join the local fire department as a volunteer firefighter. I did it for about 5 years and it was great. Training consisted of 3 months of fire training, 2 nights a week and all day Saturday, and then you would go to EMT training, another 3 months of training. I was about a year, and I was asked to help train some new recruits. One of the lieutenants, Amy, was a short, middle-aged woman who was so full of fire she could make a grown man cry. One of those people who commands both fear and respect wherever she went. Honestly, a great lieutenant and great person. When she wasn't being a drill sergeant, she was extremely kind and generous. She would often bake people cakes and treats and deliver them to the various stations in our department. However, in this new academy class that I was asked to help with, there was a cocky kid that we will call Aaron. Aaron talked big during the training and acted like he was the all-American hero. Like he was going to be the lead badass in Backdraft 2. He performed moderately well in training but far from the top of the class. He gets assigned to Amy's station, which is a pretty quiet station in the department. A few months after he starts, Amy swings by my station one night to say hi. She brings us the motherlode cake from Claim Jumper, massive 6-layer cake. She explained that she had treated her crew to a night out at Claim Jumper, which must have cost a lot of money. I think she took out about 8 people and bought a whole cake to top it all off. They had eaten the first 2 layers, so she gave us the remaining 4. We thanked her profusely and she left. Back then, the big social media platform was MySpace, and I decided to look up some of the people in the department to make friends. I came across Aaron's page, and I noticed some photos of him and the rest of his crew at Claim Jumper with Amy. However, when I read the comments, he bragged about how he had purposefully ordered the most expensive dinner, appetizers and drinks since Amy was buying. He bragged about how he was going to take advantage of her stupidity. This alone pissed me off because she was doing this super nice and generous. What an ungrateful, selfish dick. Then I read the rest of his profile. He had videos and memes on his page glorifying himself as a badass firefighter, bragging about running into burning building and how he was such a hero. He was flirting with girls, blatantly trying to impress them with how brave he is. Bear in mind, he just graduated from the academy 3 months prior and hadn't even gone to EMT school. He had never been to a house fire, and all he basically did was carry gear for the other fully qualified firefighters. It was too much for me to tolerate. So here is the revenge. I printed off copies of his MySpace page, including his comments about Amy and toxic bragging. I made multiple copies and took them to every station in the department. We all had pagers, God I'm old, and a small keyboard at each station to send out text messages. I made an anonymous, all-staff page to everyone in the department. I had to keep it brief since I couldn't fit a ton of characters, but I sent out his MySpace info and told everyone about how he treated Amy. Within an hour, Aaron had cleared out his MySpace page of all posts, photos, etc. A couple of days later, he deleted his account. It's a good thing I made so many copies. Immediately after this happened, he stopped coming to volunteer, and a few weeks later, I heard that he had quit. I later talked to Amy and admitted I was the one who sent the page. I told her I hated how he treated her, and she thanked me. She seemed really sad and hurt by what he had done. But being the tough short lady that she was, she quickly got back into being an actual badass firefighter. She later started dating and married a fire chief that also helped at the academy. I've lost touch with her, but I hope she did well. She seemed pretty happy last time I saw her. Edit. I can't stop laughing about how this story ignited a firestorm about Claim Jumper's motherlode cake. The next story is titled, An Entitled Guy Brings His Own Food to the Restaurant. So, I thought I'd post some of my stories real quick. Sorry if it seems I'm spamming them out. So quite a few years ago as I worked the restaurant gig, I called up the chef whom I'm still friends with. It's not really my story but belongs to the restaurant. At the time I was just a line cook. The setting. Our restaurant has a beautiful dining area. But even more beautiful is our panoramic view of the surrounding area and scenic beach view. We have a deck, patio for our guests, you just walk out and dine out there. There's also a higher area if you want to get the full overview, but it's roped off since it's used for events or overflow. Now occasionally we get a person who uses a side exit stairway, thinking it's an entrance, and walks up. The usual we want to take pictures or sit here with our pack lunches. Normally we usually redirect them off the patio or roped off area back into the restaurant. Most of the sack lunch people go with no issue. It was getting so bad we put signs to redirect and move people. Story. So, an entitled guy waltzes his way up the side entrance with a picnic basket and a pair of bottles of wine. We have a nice variety of wine already available to order. The entitled guy moves to roped-off area and sits down. He sets his own table, uncorks his bottle, and proceeds to eat and read a book. For a bit our team of front house staff members ignores him as they think he's a SAC customer. Once they realize he is not, we send over a server. One of our floor waitstaff members walks over to check on him. She notices he's not eating our food, nor drinking our wine. She decides to try to serve this person. First she asks if he'll move to a seat in the lower area as it'll be easier to serve him, and the area roped off is for special occasions or overflow. He refuses to leave his spot because he's comfortable there. Okay, the waitstaff person decides to go away and 10 minutes later brings him a menu. Why? She's trying to give him a legitimate reason to occupy the chair. She tries to subtly hint we're a restaurant. She then tries telling him super nicely we're a restaurant. She's being super nice by not informing management yet. He glances at the menu and rolls his eyes. The waitstaff person walks away and gives a few minutes to read over the menu. The entitled guy returns to his book and personal food. After a second attempt, still no dice. She tries for the third time. This time the entitled guy raises his voice and in a broken English way. Like when they talk down to someone, this area is public land, and I can sit here as long as I want. He cusses her and she runs back to our kitchen crying. The server herself is a tiny, voiced petite, timid girl with a very meek personality to match. The chef, another woman, consoles her. Our chef now turns livid. She's ticked, PO'd and liable to bust a vein but keeping her cool contacts manager. Meanwhile the assistant manager walks to the entitled guy and tries to get him to leave. His reply, "This land is public. I said public American land and I can sit here and enjoy myself if I want. I'm trying to enjoy my meal and I want to be left alone." Time to send in the big guns, our manager. Our manager, a very vocal and strong-willed woman, walks up and talks with him. She comes to the kitchen ticked but smiling. The entitled guy demanded to see his longtime friend, the owner. He name-dropped the owner's name, saying that the owner would allow him to sit there all day if he wanted. He doesn't really know the owner's name and photo is on the menu. Guess what? The owner's on site today. So, our manager told him his wish has been granted and his longtime buddy, the owner, is on his way out to see him. As the manager sped off to the owner's office, the entitled guy quickly recorked his bottles and packed his food. He excused himself real fast and ran straight down the stairwell. The last story is titled, You Don't Want Us to Cook? Alrighty then. I've been thinking about posting this story for a while, and just decided to commit. It brings a smile to my face, so here goes. When my brother and I were younger, 10 female, 12 male, our parents had a rule that, other than using the microwave, we could not cook without a parent present. We can prep what we wanted to cook, but we were not to so much as touch the stove or oven. We tried it once and got fussed at, that's all it took. One summer, he and I wanted to make home fries, but our mother was at work, and our father had just stepped out to do errands. I want to make home fries. Wait a minute, pardon, Mom and Dad said we couldn't cook when they're not here. Now, let me interject with a little context about me. I was a smart aleck kid, and it got me in trouble often. So, the inner workings of my mind on this day were bent towards mischief. They didn't say we couldn't cut it up, though. Wonder Twin malicious compliance, activate. We then went to work, and peeled, cut up, and seasoned the potatoes before putting them in a bowl, covering the bowl with foil and placing it in the fridge. My brother and I looked at each other and said, wouldn't it be funny if Dad came home and ate raw potatoes but said they were good even though they were raw? Now for a little more context. My dad was notorious for going into the refrigerator and eating whatever food he felt like eating, regardless of whose it was. We laughed hysterically at the thought for about 10 minutes before going back to play Sega. About 2 hours go by and then my dad came home. As expected, he went to the refrigerator and pulled out the bowl of raw potatoes. We heard the rustle of the foil and immediately went to the kitchen to watch what he was going to do. He ate a potato and said, "Oh, this is raw. It tastes good though. But why didn't you cook it?" We reminded him that he said we couldn't cook if there wasn't a parent in the house. He chuckled and got out the skillet. That rule didn't last much longer in the house, and he began teaching us how to cook more. Thank you for listening.